Rising MMA star Jack Jenkins is all set to get a UFC contract after putting on a phenomenal performance at the Dana White Contender Series. Jenkins absolutely dominated his opponent, turning the entire octagon floor into a bloodbath. And while Dana wasn't exactly blown away by his performance, it was still enough to earn him a contract. Keep watching this video as we tell you all about Jack Jenkins and the grueling beatdown. First up, a trademark move. Jack may have spent the entire fight dominating Freddy on the ground, but believe it or not, that's not exactly his style. The Aussie has just proved he's an exceptional fighter with multiple weapons up his sleeve. If someone wants to fight him on the ground, then by all means go ahead. Jenkins is a game, but that's not exactly what he's known for. The 28-year-old has a trademark leg kick that has snapped 3 legs to date. We're not even joking. Jack is known for being such a brutal kickboxer that he's broken the legs of 3 of his opponents. And even though we didn't see any of those deadly kicks against Freddy, he still managed to deliver a grueling beatdown to seal the deal and win a UFC contract. In case you don't know much about Jenkins, he's a featherweight with a professional MMA record of 10 victories coming off of just 2 losses. He's been absolutely unstoppable recently. The Aussie's on a killer 7-fight win streak, and the best part is that he's going to be riding that crazy momentum to the UFC. Oh, and he's already being called a force of nature for bloodying up Freddy in the octagon like nothing we've ever seen before. After locking his opponent on the ground, Jenkins threw a devastating elbow to his skull, splitting open a nasty cut above his eye in the process. It was probably the most blood we've ever seen inside the octagon in a really long time. Next, a one-trick pony. We've said this before and we'll say it again. Dana White is a very hard man to impress. He was sitting ringside watching the fight very closely because all his mates had been telling him about Jenkins' kickboxing. They told him stuff like how the Aussie's known for snapping bones and ending fights with just a single kick. And let's not kid ourselves. When Dana hears something like that, he gets all excited like a little kid. He was tuned in waiting for Jenkins to launch Freddy with a monstrous kick, but after seeing how most of the fight was fought on the ground, White wasn't really that impressed. The boss said it was a really unidimensional fight and he didn't really see what all the hype was about. My thing with Jack Jenkins tonight is that he looked like a one-trick pony. He kept going to the ground. He absolutely dominated, but the boys were telling me that he's actually a great kickboxer. I didn't see any of that tonight. Believe it or not, Dana actually said that he was in no mood to give Jenkins a UFC contract. But then he remembered what fellow Aussie Jimmy Crute said. And since Dana had already heard so much about Jenkins' kickboxing prowess, it's possible that's why he decided to give the 28-year-old a shot. The UFC president also said that if this was just some regular night, then there's a 100% chance he wouldn't have signed him. But since it was the last show of the season, Dana figured, why not, and bought into the hype. Moving on, about to ramp it up. When word finally reached Jenkins that Dana called him a one-trick pony, he wasn't particularly upset or anything. Actually, we'd like to hand it to the Aussie for taking criticism head-on. The 28-year-old said that he might have gotten a bit carried away and maybe, just maybe, he let the moment get the better of him. We're not gonna lie, we have no clue what he means by that. If letting the moment get the better of him means butchering his opponent inside the octagon, then yeah, please let it happen more often. And we get the fact that Dana said all that because everyone sold him on Jenkins' kickboxing abilities and how he's a leg snapper. But watching him school Linares was just legendary. It felt like the entire fight was just a huge mismatch since Jack was clearly on another level. But anyway, Jenkins claimed that this was exactly the start he'd been hoping for, and now that he has it, he can't wait to ramp things up in the coming fights. Now for training with champions. After securing a contract with the biggest fight promotion in the world, Jenkins is looking forward to making a name for himself with a debut as early as UFC 284. And like the majority of fresh fighters being signed by the promotion, he's probably going to be put on the classic Dana White path. A couple of unranked opponents to see if the hype is real before finally being given someone from the top 5. But when it comes to Jack, he has an edge over the competition. The 28-year-old just so happens to train with one of the most dominant champions in the history of the sport, Alexander Volkanovski. So when he finally makes his debut, whether it's at UFC 284 or a later event, he'll be stepping in having trained with the UFC champion. Time for some more on the UFC. Up next, he's peaking. With less than 2 weeks left in the battle for the lightweight title, Khabib Nurmagomedov has finally broken the silence, claiming Islam is ready to run through Oliveira. Contrary to what everyone else is saying, Khabib actually thinks Islam is significantly more skilled than Charles. Honestly, we don't know how to react to that because if we compare their records, Charles' submissions and Islam fights are probably the same number. But then again, it's not surprising Khabib would say something like that since he's going to be mentoring him from his corner on the night of the action. Meanwhile, DeBronx is enjoying Abu Dhabi, as he was just pictured walking alongside a lion and even hugging one from the back. There's obviously a clear difference in how both men are feeling before the fight, since the Russian is in the gym, perfecting his moves to make his mentor proud, and the Brazilian is walking around with lions, having fun and just soaking in what Abu Dhabi has to offer. We're hoping this doesn't end up backfiring on DeBronx though. He needed this win more than ever. Following up, he's getting paid for this stuff. We don't know what to tell you. What just happened between Volkanovski and Beneil is both funny and bizarre. Beneil's manager apparently told him a couple of months back that he would probably be filling in as the backup fighter for the Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira fight. And without any follow-up whatsoever, Dariush just believed his manager and didn't talk about it ever again. He just assumed it was concrete and thought he'd be filling in if any of the two gentlemen decided to pull out on the night of action. But when he first heard that Alexander Volkanovski would be the backup fighter, he pretty much lost his mind. Volka hit back, saying he's literally getting paid for this stuff. Like his corner's being flown out to Abu Dhabi, and he's having a blast while training hard in case any of the two fighters slip. Dariush probably just assumed he was the official backup since his manager mentioned it to him once. How does that even happen though? Like, Beneil just assumed he was the backup without even being contacted by the UFC. That's hilarious. Last but not least, is Tony broke? We've been pushing this for a very long time now. Tony Ferguson should seriously consider retiring now. He's done fighting and it's all going to go downhill from here if he doesn't stop. Even UFC legend GSP said that fighting inside the cage is nothing but an addiction. That feeling you get when you win a fight is next to nothing. And considering how Tony hasn't won in a very long time, we think he's just chasing that hit. He needs to feel alive again, and to do that, he needs to taste victory. But what's the point of running after a victory when you're clearly out of gas? And don't get us wrong, we have all respect for Ferguson. He's done so much for the promotion, but anything beyond this is just damage to his body. UFC Hall of Famer Khabib Nurmagomedov thinks Tony's time has been up for a very long time now, but the only reason he continues to fight is because he's broke. There are other ways to make money, you know. If that really is the case, then someone seriously needs to talk to Tony and get him to stop. He's just doing more damage to himself. That's it from our side, folks. So what do you think? Were you impressed after watching Jenkins dominate Freddy? And do you agree with Dana calling him a one-trick pony for chasing a takedown? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more exciting videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.